Welcome to the Pump Take Sports Show. Me and Aiden are back on our Wednesday football show. We're going to be doing a cool video today. As you can see in the title here, the NFL quarterback carousel. It's pretty unprecedented. We were talking before this. For an offseason, have so much quarterback turnover. Obviously, we're going to talk about the Carson Wentz situation, the Watson situation, and then we have about 18 teams that we've highlighted that have a little bit of uncertainty at the quarterback position. So we're going to show you their cap, the top 5 guys hitting their cap, so you know kind of where their quarterbacks fall within that range. Some teams are going to draft a quarterback, of course, and we're going to talk about that as well. But this is the NFL 2021 quarterback carousel video from me and Aiden. So Aiden, how you doing, man?
I'm not too bad. I'm ready to get started. We're going to open, I think, just by talking about the Wentz deal that went down last week. Yeah, I have some thoughts on that. So if you want to just jump into it, I'm ready.
All right. So as you can see here, we've got, hopefully our heads aren't covering any numbers. They might be. But if they are, essentially the cap hit, this is ordered in terms of cap hit of the total team's cap. So Carson Wentz here, as you can see on the Colts now, is the number 1 cap hit at $25.4 million, which is 13% of their cap. That's a lot of money to be paying a guy who really didn't have a lot of trade value on the market. So what were your initial thoughts about this trade? Because I know I wasn't a huge fan of the Colts going in this direction, but I'm curious what you had to think about it.
Yeah, I have some pretty strong thoughts on just the idea of them making this move for Wentz. But just like the initial impact, I guess I would say I felt good for the Colts that they didn't give up too much, I guess, just based on what the reports were. Everyone was saying it was going to be a first round pick, maybe even 2 first round picks, and that was just way too much in my mind. So my initial thoughts were, well, at least they didn't give up first round picks. But my take on this is very similar to what I thought about the Stafford trade. Obviously, I don't want to conflate those two. They're different players. I think they are a lot more similar than some people think.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't really, in my opinion, I don't like the Colts going in this direction. I didn't love the Rams doing what they did because my problem is it's basically just like a cost benefit thing, right?
Yeah.
This makes those teams better. It makes the Colts better. It makes the Rams better. It puts them in a spot to compete for a playoff spot at the absolute least. But does it really make them a Super Bowl contender? Like, does this push them into the realm of competing with the Chiefs or the Buccaneers or even the Packers? Like, my answer is no. So to me, what this kind of deal is it's like it's paying to not be really bad instead of paying to win, which I don't really like that mentality in the NFL, because you're putting all your chips in what is realistically going to be a relatively low chance of success. When you look around the league and you self-scout your team, as good as those 2 teams are, I'm just thinking, like, I don't know, do these 2 guys, like, you would have to basically get top 10, top 5 quarterback play out of both of them,
Yeah.
which is like not impossible. There's a chance that happens for either one. Obviously a little higher with Stafford, but I'm just thinking, like, I don't know, if it doesn't bring you close to beating the best teams in the league, what's the point? Because you're going to need the assets you're giving up if you fail, right? To rebuild.
And you know
So
what,
you're
man?
giving those up.
I completely agree. That, as you said to begin, though, the nice thing about this deal for the Colts is it was almost no cost to get Wentz. Like, what did they give? A 3rd and a conditional 5th or something?
It was a 2nd and a conditional 1st. So basically, what the terms of the trade are, which we probably should have started out with.
Yeah.
Indianapolis is getting Wentz, obviously. Philadelphia is getting a third, in this year's draft, in the 2021 draft coming up in April, and a first round pick that turns into a second round pick if Wentz doesn't play either 75% of the snaps in the regular season and the Colts don't make the playoffs, or 70% of the snaps in the regular season and the playoffs if the Colts make the playoffs. Okay. So basically, like, if Wentz, the way I think about it is, if Wentz gets hurt or gets benched, there's a very low chance that the Eagles are going to get a first round pick. Mm-hmm. But if he starts the majority of the games, the Eagles will be getting a first round pick.
Interesting. And that's kind of a nice little caveat to it too, because you have to think that if Wentz starts, 17 games in the season and the Colts do make the playoffs, that you have to ask yourself the question, is it worth a first round pick, right? Like, is that
Yeah.
then in turn worth a pick to be in there and have a better quarterback than Phillip Rivers, obviously I'm referring to. And he's young too, man. There's nothing to say that they can't kind of ride with him for a while if it does work out.
Yeah.
I have the same problems with it that you do. And I think from the Eagles' point of view, it was pretty good, honestly. Like, I think for what the kind of, we have 19 teams to cover here in the quarterback carousel, as we're calling it. You have 2 young guys on your team. If you can get a second and a conditional first for Wentz, who it's interesting because the Eagles won a Super Bowl like semi recently, but Wentz didn't win it. It was BDN's big run to the end there, but Wentz did set them up in that position. But it's like Wentz has just had kind of a bounce back, up and down kind of career, and I think moving for the Eagles in the direction of Jalen Hurts is the right call for sure.
Yeah, honestly, I think this is the best move for both sides. Like Wentz, I just don't think like his mentality as a quarterback was ever fit for the market and the fans in Philadelphia. I think that just kind of weighed on him. Obviously, his confidence looked shot this last year, and part of that is probably having to do with the Super Bowl scenario where, he was like this franchise quarterback, and all of a sudden, the guy behind you wins the Super Bowl for the city that has wanted it for so long, and they build a statue, and like it was just always a little awkward. And then for the Eagles side of things, like I saw a lot of Eagles fans in particular saying that the Eagles didn't get enough. It's like, what were you really expecting? Like, this was Wentz's lowest possible trade value, and he still got you a possible first round pick. Like, I would be kind of jumping for joy if I were them. Like, I get the tendency to not want to move on, just because of what Wentz brought you in the past, but
you need to move in a direction, man. And if they held on to both quarterbacks, they're not moving in a direction, right? They're just staying in that weird neutral zone. And I'm not.
Yeah, I think it was a good risk for the Eagles. I don't know in terms of the Colts, like the outlook for the Colts. I mean, I already kind of described it. I think like what the Rams and the Colts are both doing is kind of like firing a shot in the dark. It's more likely to ricochet back and hit them than it is to hit their intended target of a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So I don't like the idea of giving up all these picks for like just to be kind of really good, but most likely, like very likely, like 70+% chance not win a Super Bowl. But with that being said, I think the terms of the trade for the Colts are kind of really good, because if Wentz works out for you and you're in the playoffs and you're playing well and you have him under contract, you're not going to really mind giving up a first and a third.
No,
but you're also in control. Like if he sucks, okay, whatever, cut your losses. Don't just bench him, and don't give up that first round pick.
So. And you gave away a second round pick, which
exactly.
But for a shot in the dark on a young QB, and also like to play devil's advocate here. This will probably be the best team Wentz has ever had. So, it will be the best team Wentz has ever had. In terms of the weapons around him, he's got a nice running back to kind of lean back on when he's feeling a little shaky in the pocket, a good offensive line for the most part. So, I mean, who knows, right? You never really know with young QBs. We've seen it before where they move locations and it kind of helps them out and helps them develop. But I agree with everything you're saying, man.
Yeah.
I think.
Sorry. Go. Oh, I was just gonna say, like, the bottom line for me is like, I think that it's a risk. It's a risky move, which normally I'm all supportive of, NFL teams being willing to take risks.
But isn't it almost like betting on a really small pot?
Exactly. That's my whole point, man, is that what I like is calculated risks, right? I like taking shots on QBs in the draft over and over until you find an elite guy. With this one, it's like the odds of you getting an elite guy and you're giving up multiple picks instead of just one pick that you could use to take a shot on, a young quarterback for cheap. It just doesn't, like, it's not really a calculated risk. It just feels like you're just kind of going like, I don't know what else to do, so let's just do this because we need a guy, because our roster's good. We got to have some guy in there. And I just don't really like that. It feels desperate rather than like a move that you're really thinking about, both the future and the present and what is smart for your team. But I mean, I think we can both separate the move itself from the outlook of the team. And Wentz does make the Colts better. It does make them a playoff contender. It makes them a contender for the AFC South. So at the end of the day, I think I like this move honestly better than the Rams giving up 2 firsts and like taking on all that dead cap.
And it's the similar sense to what I just said. It's like betting on a small pot. To bet on a small pot, you probably don't have to put much in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of the same idea in that sense, that as we kind of just said a few times, is that like it's a small gamble for what they're really giving up. But again, small payoff kind of because you don't really know exactly what's going to happen with Wentz. But on the quarterback QB carousel for every team, we're going to be saying at the end who we think the starter will be day one, week one, who's going to be in there. And we're going to try and make it fun. Where we're, there's the status quo sometimes can be, it can be pretty predictive in the NFL sometimes. So we're going to try and add some spice to it. But I will say that, the Colts have made this move. Wentz will be starting week one, and it'll be very interesting to see how. I'm excited to watch some Colts football, honestly. If it doesn't add it, if it doesn't make them win a Super Bowl, at least it keeps more eyes on their team and, maybe get some revenue up, because I'm going to be watching a lot more Colts games for sure.
Yeah, me too. They're more exciting than last year with Rivers. Like, I love Rivers. Like, he was great his whole career, but he just wasn't the same last year. With Wentz, you don't really know what you're going to be getting. There's a high ceiling there.
Yeah.
But also a really low floor. So it'll be entertaining no matter what.
He's got that youth potential still in him, which every sports fan just drools over. So who are you thinking is going to start week one for the Colts? Same thing? Carson Wentz?
Yeah, same thing. It's going to be Carson Wentz. You don't give up what they gave up to not have him start week one. We'll see who's starting week 17 when that 70% is
even
approaching, even like week 10. Yeah.
All right, man, let's move on to the next team. An exciting one for us here, the Houston Texans. So here's the salary cap situation here. As you can see, Deshaun is not hitting the cap hit as much as Laramie Tunsil this upcoming season, but they're not even thinking about the cap. They're thinking about what the hell are we doing with our quarterback? Are we going to trade him? Are we going to keep him? If you're Houston, you are doing everything you can to keep this guy around. We've talked before in another video that other than Pat Mahomes, he's probably the number 2 asset you would want in the NFL. So they have got to keep this guy around. They hit on him in the draft. It's, and I don't want to ramble too much, but I have some thoughts kind of about the Texans themselves and then Deshaun as a single entity. I think there's this stink on the Texans. Like they're kind of this like bottom feeder, like kind of has that like Jets stink to it where they just aren't very good, but that's just simply like not the case over the last 5 years. Yes, they weren't good this year, but like they were winning, Bill O'Brien gets clowned a lot, but they were winning division titles. Everyone, I guess it's a little forgotten now because of recency bias and stuff, but they were in a playoff game against the Chiefs and they were up like 24-0 in the first quarter. They blew one of the biggest playoff leads I've ever seen. But I don't think that it's fair for people to say that the Texans are completely like a dog water franchise that has done nothing good by their stars, because they have in the past. Obviously, J.J. Watt has left now and Deshaun wants out. So there's this kind of big smell going around them. But I don't think it's fair to kind of put the Texans in that category with the Jets and kind of those like stinky teams at the bottom of the league. Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I would say that they don't really have that stink. Like, I don't know. I guess it depends on your perception, but like they're obviously the youngest franchise in the NFL. So I guess it's kind of hard to have that, but like, yeah, teams like the Jets and like the Browns, the Bengals, like they have like a long history of being just bottom feeder teams that like can never get out of their own way to succeed. Like even the Chargers and the Bills, like they've had some success throughout the years, but like they just can never see. The Vikings are maybe one of those, I guess, to a lesser degree, because they've had a little bit. They've been better recently. Like they've been one of those like teams that makes it every year. But my point is, like, there's these teams that have been bad for like throughout history for decades that have that stink. The Texans aren't quite there yet, because in their short time of being a franchise, they've actually had a lot of success.
They have.
Even under Bill O'Brien. Like this whole thing just kind of randomly fell apart last year, I would say.
And actually, man, not to interrupt you, but I think his name was Bob McNair, was the guy that owned the team and kind of made all the decisions in Houston. And now his son, Cal McNair, has been running the show for about 2 years. I think his name's Cal. Has been running the show for about 2 years. And you can already see it immediately starting to fall apart. And you have to think to yourself, like, wow, it really shows just how much that like front office leadership means to teams, because you start making some bad decisions. Think about what they've done in the last couple of years. The Hopkins trade. Yeah. They've moved away from star player again and again. They've played it conservatively. Deshaun
trading away picks for
trading
like
picks.
players, non-QBs.
They don't even own their third overall pick this year. Like it's
Yeah.
an absolute mess, right? And this has happened in a really short time from when the Texans were, they were the favorite to win their division like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And they've really fallen far very quickly. You can't really blame Deshaun Watson for wanting out of a situation.
Not at all.
Because it's such a mess. Like absolute mess.
It's a mess. And it comes back to what you were saying, like the Texans want to do everything in their power to keep him, which obviously they do, but the whole reason why this problem is here is because they've been doing literally the exact opposite for like almost 2 years now. Just like mortgaging the future for short-term, like short-sighted deals, like trading for Clowney and trading for Laramie Tunsil. As good as he is, I don't think anyone will argue he's worth 2 first-round picks, especially now in this messy situation. Not having those picks hurts a lot. Trading away his best receiver, just overall, like telling him he's going to be involved in the coaching
and not
GM search
doing that.
And then what are you thinking? Like you have this guy, you think you would be like doing whatever you can to make him happy, but they're doing the opposite.
I do more to make my Madden franchise QB happy than to make him happy. Yeah. And you even look at I urge people, I said this in a previous video, but to watch David Culley, who's the new coach of the Texans, his press conference, his introductory press conference, it is the most awkward thing ever because everyone wants to talk about Deshaun and they just keep pivoting away from it. But that being said, he seems like a nice guy. But what kind of hire is that, man? When your quarterback has already told you he's frustrated with the decisions and he needs out, and you hire wasn't he the Ravens pass game coordinator who was 31st in the league? The Ravens were 31st in the league in passing last year. So you're going to bring in a guy that didn't have a great, I'm not going to say he didn't do his job well or anything like that because I don't know too much about it, but you know what I mean. It's a weird hire when you have all these great candidates still out there that hadn't been hired yet, and you bring in this guy. It's another scenario of them just missing the ball again on what their star QB wants.
Yeah, I think we all knew that Watson wanted Bieniemy most likely.
Yeah.
And they didn't. I don't even think they made an effort to get him. So I don't know. At the end of the day, this isn't the NBA where like if a star wants out, he's going to get out. The Texans have a lot of avenues to keep Deshaun Watson. That being said, like Watson does have some leverage. Like he has a chance to set a precedent here with the draft approaching. Like if like Watson is going to lose some money if he decides to sit out, but if the Texans try and call his bluff and miss out on the potential picks trading him that they would get from this draft, like let's say the draft goes by, like that's going to suck for them. So there might be some time pressure there. At the end of the day, a lot is yet to play out before we know what's going to happen in this situation here. But I think we sort of have laid it out well. It's a big mess. Anything could happen. He could be back. You know, maybe they do some things to like they give him like minority ownership in the team or something like that. Like they give him some stocks or something.
They give him some sort of like 25% in some oil company that the McNair family owns, and they just make him a rich, like very, very rich man.
Yeah. And he's like, sure, I'll play football for the Texans. Like, just re-sign Will Fuller or something like that.
Exactly.
So that could happen. At the same time, it is like a very real possibility that he does get traded, and the Texans are just like, I mean, they haven't been real good at avaluating their own organization recently, but there's a chance that they look at themselves and they're like, we're not winning a Super Bowl anytime soon. Let's get some picks.
You would have to get a damn U-Haul truck to move this guy.
Oh, for sure.
You would
think anyways, right? But who knows? We thought the same thing, similar, not quite, obviously he's not a quarterback, but like we would have thought, DeAndre Hopkins is at least getting a first round pick plus, but he didn't at all. So who knows?
Fair enough. I mean, but if they don't walk away from this with 4 first round picks at least, they're confused. They're losing their marbles. So let me ask you this then, so we don't spend too much time just kind of roasting the Texans. Do you see Deshaun Watson suiting up in a Texans uniform week 1?
As I kind of said, I do see it as a possibility, but for the sake of choosing who I think is going to be the Texans starting quarterback, I'm going to go with Sam Darnold is going to be in a Texans uniform wearing number 14, starting at QB for the Christian pastor that runs the organization. He's going to love little Sam there.
Yeah, loves.
So I think that's who they're going to go with.
So let me ask you this, then they're going to trade the 2nd overall pick. They're going to trade probably like 5 other picks, and they're going to get Deshaun Watson, and then the Texans are going to pick a quarterback with the 2nd overall pick. That's the scenario that you're laying out here?
Well, no, and we'll see this as we go along. Sam Darnold is not part of the Watson deal. The Jets are not getting Sam Darnold in this, or sorry, the Jets are not getting Deshaun Watson here. That is a separate deal under my analysis.
Oh, I
here.
see. Okay. I
Yeah.
didn't know if it was like a direct like move where they got Darnold and like 4 picks.
Yeah, no. So we'll see this later. And like realistically, if this trade were to happen, the way I have it going, the Texans would likely have another quarterback instead. But I'm just gonna say, like, just based on what we've seen with the Goff deal, like how those two got traded in the same deal. But at the same time, it's not impossible that, these guys get moved in isolated deals. Like, let's say, for example, the 49ers trade for Kirk Cousins or something. They don't necessarily have to send Garoppolo to the Vikings. Like, they could do a different trade, or they could even just like cut him, because the 49ers could cut him.
They very well could cut him.
So anyways,
before we move on, no, I like it, man. That's interesting. I know I just said I wasn't gonna be status quo to make it interesting, but I've just kind of planted a flag in the fact that I think Watson will start with the Texans week 1. I just don't see a scenario where you can move a guy like this. I know there's pressure. I know there's internal and external pressure happening here, but this is your franchise. You need to do, I mean, once again, maybe I'm putting too much credit into the Texans organization, but I think they'll figure it out. I think they'll sit him down, and I think they'll be able to make a happier marriage than where they are right now and move forward in that way. So I think Deshaun will start as a Texan week 1, but I love the idea that Sammy Boy is in there doing it.
Yeah, I definitely agree that's a possibility. We spend a lot of time on the first two, and I think there's a good reason for that, just because they're definitely the two situations that have the most to talk about.
Absolutely.
But the next one, we don't need to spend too much time on.
No. Not at all. You're absolutely right. We can fly through this. The Jaguars don't have a QB, therefore they're on the QB carousel, but look at that man right there. Look at his hair. He's coming to Jacksonville. It's a new era in Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence is going to be picked first overall. And if he isn't, oh my God. Like, just like the Jets are salivating at the idea of the Jaguars making a mistake here. But let's not
I don't think it's possible.
Yeah, me neither. But let's just not waste too much time. Trevor Lawrence is going to the Jags. They're getting their guy, and it's a new era in Jacksonville. Next, we've got a little bit of an interesting one here. The Miami Dolphins. I've seen stuff talking about how the Dolphins should move on from Tua. I don't buy into that. I think the guy's had one season. There was questions with him coming out of college because of injury and stuff like that. He showed that didn't really hold him back. I think there's such an unfair expectation of quarterbacks now, that how many good young ones are coming into the league instantly being amazing, that it's kind of like misshaping the opinions of people looking at, guys like Tua who come in and look what they did. They won, I think it was 10 games, right? 10-6 and missed the playoffs. I think that's a great season for your first quarterback, like first year as a quarterback. I think, you have a marriage of a coach and a quarterback that needs to go well. I think moving forward, it'll just get better. And I think they've got a team here, a young team here that can really be built around Tua.
I agree with a lot of what you're saying there. I will say, I think that the discussion is here for two main reasons. Part of it is what you said, just the general like good young QBs coming into the league and immediately having success. But the reality is Tua didn't play well. That's why the discussion is here. He was not very good last year. If you look at the box score stats, I'm sure they're fine because they did win games, but he had a lot of dropped interceptions. He was not super accurate throwing downfield. He couldn't really throw that well outside the numbers. So
you're right.
Part of it is there. And then the other part is Herbert. There's a lot of rumors that Herbert was going to be chosen over Tua, and he wasn't. And obviously Herbert was miles better in his rookie season, winning Rookie of the Year. So I think those are the reasons why the discussion is there. But I do agree with your fundamental point that he deserves another chance. It's not like he was awful. He just didn't really show very much in his first year, but there's a lot of room to grow. There's a lot of room to see what we saw at Alabama still. So I think the smart thing, the Dolphins are playing with house money here, getting the Texans' third overall pick. And I think that's another reason why the discussion is here. Maybe they'll use that third overall pick to select Justin Fields or Zach Wilson, whoever's there. I think that's another reason. But at the same time, they have that pick to build around Tua.
Exactly.
And if it doesn't work with Tua, like if you can assemble a good roster around Tua, because that's another thing, is the offense wasn't great last year.
Yeah.
If you can assemble a good offense around Tua and he still doesn't play well, okay, then you can think about moving on next year.
Yeah.
But give him another chance with an actual, full season to come in and like spend, learn the offense more, get better playmakers and a better O-line around him. I think he deserves another chance.
They also didn't have a proper offseason because of COVID and other concerns. So this is going to be, this is next NFL offseason. Hopefully it's happening in person. He can kind of actually really dive into his first real, not COVID concerned first season. I guess it's his second season, but you know what I'm trying to say. He'll get out there and he'll have a second chance at kind of doing what he was drafted to do. And I don't think I think it's too early to give up so far. So, and with that third overall pick, you're going to get a guy who can protect him very well. Check out our mock draft video. We draft someone to protect him. So once again, not trying to just go status quo here, but I think Tua is going to start week 1 for Miami. It would be hard to say that he doesn't. You would have to project a trade, which you might do. So what do you think?
No, I'm saying I think it's going to be Tua next year. I agree. I don't think the Dolphins are using the third pick to draft a quarterback, regardless of you think they should or not. I think if you're looking at this realistically, they're not going to do that. The only scenario I see them moving off Tua is if Watson gets floated in their face. They are, with the 2 first-round picks that they have, one of the best contenders to acquire Deshaun Watson. They also have a ton of cap space that they could use to.
Can you imagine how good that would be, man? Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think that's the ideal scenario for Watson, but I don't see in this prediction. I kind of went with something that I think would be more fun for Watson. So, and at the end of the day, I think the Dolphins, like what they lose by not getting Watson is actually a lot less than what other teams would lose, you know, because they still could potentially have a really good quarterback in Tua. Whereas, the Jets don't have a good quarterback in Sam.
Exactly, man. And how much would it suck for them to trade Tua and then have it come back in 3 or 4 years that Tua's like a nice field general quarterback that can kind of like run an offense properly? That would really suck to see for the Dolphins. So, we both think Tua is going to be there for Miami next season. All right, we're talking about the Patriots. Weird to have the Patriots. This is probably the first time in 18 years that a off-season quarterback, like carousel video, as we're calling it, has the Patriots in it, because they've just had Dom for the last 2 decades. And, but here we are. The Patriots are in here. I have a picture of Cam right there because he started for them last year. But they've got some questions for sure. Are they going to draft a quarterback this year? Are they going to stick with Cam again? With all the guys they had opting out of COVID coming back, that might be something that makes their team better as well. And Belichick might just think we can run it back with Cam and try and get a super high pick next year. So what do you think about the Patriots?
Well, I'll just say right off the bat, I don't think they're going to run it back with Cam. And the reason why is pretty clear. I think both parties can look at what happened last year and agree that regardless of what you think of Cam, it just wasn't a good fit for him.
Yeah.
Like the Patriots personnel on offense, they basically had no receivers that were, worth starting. And I don't want to besmirch the good name of Jacoby Myers, because I think he's a solid complementary receiver.
Yeah.
And there's some other guys there that are solid guys. But you can't have an offense like that going out there in the 2021 NFL and expect to have success. No. So especially when you're Cam Newton, who is kind of I don't think he's totally done, but he's definitely declined physically. You can't expect him to go out there and carry the offense.
He looks horrible some games, man.
I agree. But I'm just saying, I don't think, regardless of what you think of Cam, I don't think that you can say he was put in the best position to succeed. And I think the Patriots would agree with that. And they will say, you know what, it's best for both parties to move on.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I'm looking at their roster. And like you mentioned, there's some guys coming back. A couple big guys on that list that opted out.
There, you can see.
Yeah, and Marcus Cannon as well. Both opted out, and they're going to be coming back. But the reality is, even with these guys coming back, the roster is old. It's not going to be, even if it's good next year, which I think is a big if, it's not going to be good for much longer. I think the Patriots need to be looking towards the future. I don't necessarily think that means you need to be cutting these guys or anything next year. I'm just saying you need to be thinking okay, we're not going to, with the offense we have, and even with the defense, some guys you can project some decline.
Yeah.
we're not going to be winning a Super Bowl. So you got to be kind of looking towards the future. And that's kind of tied into who I think the starting quarterback is going to be next year. But before I give my prediction, I wanted to know if you have any thoughts on this situation.
Yeah, man. Pretty much the same. Not to echo you, but I'm going to. It is a messy. It's an older team. They're kind of past where they are to win a Super Bowl right now, and I guess I'll just say what I think they're going to do. I think they're going to start one of the guys in their young system. I think they're going to probably start Jared Stidham week 1, and I think they're going to go for like a first overall pick. I think
that's reasonable.
Yeah, I think this is a situation where Cam is just not. What are you doing with Cam at this point? You put Jared Stidham out there, you see how he is. And I think, as you said, the Patriots need to be looking to the future because the NFL is progressing at such a fast rate that if you don't get ahead, you're going to fall behind. So go get a young QB, first overall, second overall, third overall next year. And it's going to be tough to tell Belichick that he has to not tank, but not be competitive constantly. And it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I've been seeing some stuff about Belichick's legacy lately. That's kind of interesting with Tom winning, and people are questioning, is Belichick still the best NFL coach ever? Some interesting stuff out there that are nice talking points. But yeah, first overall pick. I think they're going for it next year. Jared Stidham starts week 1.
I think that is probably what I would call the second likeliest outcome. I don't think that's crazy. I'm going to go with that the Patriots are going to take Mac Jones at 15 overall and roll with him. And there's a couple of reasons why. Number one, I do like Mac Jones. I think a lot more than some people do. I think he's worth a first round pick and probably worth the 15th overall pick. He did play really well at Alabama, and obviously the big knock is that he wouldn't play well at Alabama. In that system with multiple guys that are going to be starting in the NFL next year.
Almost the entire offense is going to the NFL.
Exactly. Yeah. So I get that, and obviously the system plays a big role as well, not just the personnel at Alabama. But at the same time, he did play really well. It's not like he did have some good throws on tape. And he did execute the offense, and that's kind of what the Patriots like. They have a very Josh McDaniels there has a very offense that's oriented towards rhythm throws in the system, short passing game, operating that way. And Mac Jones can execute that. He can do that, and he can do that at a high level. He proved that at Alabama. So if you get better personnel around Mac Jones, I think you can actually have success. So
the argument to say that, I don't really understand the argument of oh well, he played good at Alabama, so him playing good doesn't matter. It's I get it to a certain degree because it's he has wider throwing windows and stuff like that because his players are just better. But he's going to the NFL where his team is going to be really good, just like it was at Alabama. So it's I would if a guy plays really good at a school with no talent, I get that that's more impressive in a way. But at the same time, he's going to an NFL offense where all these Alabama guys are going anyway. Yeah. So I don't really love that knock against him. I could totally see them taking Mac Jones as well. I just think that they're going to want to take a guy. Mac Jones is not the best quarterback in this class. And I think if you're the Patriots, look a little further down the line and try and get a guy that is the best in the class.
I definitely can see that, and I don't think that's crazy. I just am thinking Mac Jones fits what they want to do. So if he's there, I could definitely see them going that. I think that's pretty likely, actually. And just to say one more thing about Mac Jones, I will say I think it's fair, the criticism of saying oh, he played in a really good offense, because while he's going to play in an NFL caliber offense next year, first of all, if he goes to the Patriots, he's not really going to. He's probably going to the worst receiving core in the league.
Yeah, fair enough.
Their offensive line is good, but still. And then at the same time, the defensive level of competition is also jumping way up.
It is.
So I think it's a fair criticism, but I'm just not a big fan of I kind of realized it after my evaluation on Justin Herbert last year of not criticizing a guy for what you don't see him do. I'm not going to criticize Mac Jones because we didn't see him need to play out of structure, because while his athletic traits kind of make you think that he can't or he wouldn't be able to do it great, I should say, just because we didn't see him do it doesn't mean he can't do it or he can't adapt to doing it. So that's why I'm kind of leaning Mac Jones. I think the Patriots will like what they see there as far as a quarterback that can execute the offensive system, and if they can get some receivers around him, I think they will like that route. But just to say it one more time, I do think that it is a very realistic and maybe even the smarter long-term play to just go for a high pick next year.
Yeah, Mac Jones seems like a Josh McDaniels guy, eh? But anyway, we've locked in our Patriots things, and here we are to the Jumbo Jets, the New York Jumbo Jets. There's a picture of their boy Sammy Darnold there. Here's their top 5 cap hits. Basically nothing. Like, they have so much cap space, it's unbelievable. So when you talk about, we're going to do a free agent video soon. When you talk about free agents or quarterbacks being signed to come here, totally a landing destination here with just how little money they actually are dishing out to players. Obviously, the situation's a little bit of a mess, but I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this because in our mock draft video, we did a little bit. I think they're taking Zach Wilson out of BYU, and I think they're just going to roll with him to be the future of their organization.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's the smart play for the Jets, and obviously the Jets are not necessarily prone to making the smart play in the past, but it kind of is in what you just said there about their cap situation. They're going to have to pay Sam Darnold if they stick with him, which a lot of people seem to think, they should use their draft capital to build around Sam. First of all, neither of us, I don't think, believe in Sam, at the very least in a New York Jets uniform.
Yeah.
But also, second of all, they have a ton of cap room as well. So if your argument is that you want to build around a quarterback, why not build around him using the cap room instead of having to pay Sam Darnold more money and just have that rookie quarterback on the rookie deal and spend in free agency to get him some help?
And Jets fans love to talk about their cap, but you tell me right now, you're willing to sacrifice 40% of that cap to make a run with Sam? Really? Are you really willing to do that? Or would you rather actual money on the table? It's really easy to say, stick with Sam, build around Sam. You put that money on the table. You say, this is what it's going to cost us to build a team around Sam in free agency. Are you okay with doing this? It's going to lock us up for years in this Sam world. Of course not. You're going to want to take a guy second overall, have a brand new rookie contract, and do it the right way and not waste your time with Sam anymore. I'm not insulting Sam or anything, but he needs to go to a different team. He needs a new scenery. He needs a new place. It just should be a nice mutual breakup for the Jets and Sam, because it just makes sense. And so Zach, I think, is going to be the guy that they go with.
Zach Wilson for me. I'm not a Sam Darnold guy, but I do agree change of scenery is best for both situations. I'm ready to move on to the next one.
Yeah, me as well. The Broncos are here, and so here's their cap. Look at that Von Miller cap hit. It is quite large for an older player with some injury concerns, but we've talked about this one a little bit as well in the mock draft video, but I will say I think the Broncos are going to stick with Drew Lock for the upcoming season, and I don't think it's a very good idea because I don't think Drew Lock is going to turn out to be very good in the long run. So I think this is a situation where you rolled the dice on Drew Lock, you hit a 2, it didn't really work out very well for you. You got to roll the dice again instead of trying to stick around in this mediocrity world of where Drew Lock's your quarterback.
Yeah, I do agree. I've never been a big Drew Lock believer, but I am predicting that Drew Lock stays. And what it comes down to is, number one, the Broncos have kind of shown in some of their trade negotiations. I think I did talk about it in the mock draft video, so I won't reiterate that the exact situation, but they've made it clear, let's just say, that they want to stick with Drew Lock, whether he's the starter or just keeping him on the roster. But I don't think that now with all the pieces that have moved in Stafford and Wentz, I don't really see a situation where they have the capital or to get Watson, first of all, or like they can't compete with the Jets or the
Dolphins. No. Yeah.
And then the other thing is that I don't really see a situation like who's left is basically what I'm trying to say. That it's reasonable for the Broncos. Like, we'll talk about it in a little bit. But like, you have Carr and Kirk possibly on the table. Like, that would be good to get in their offense. Yeah, Dak is definitely on the table. That would be good to get in their offense. But I don't know, because you have the receivers and everything. I just don't see it. I just don't see a path. Obviously, they can't get Carr because he's in the division.
No.
But so that's why I think. I mean, it's possible they draft like Trey Lance, but I think this is just like, I think both of us are just kind of on the same wavelength here, where we just don't see the Broncos moving off of Drew Lock.
Exactly.
Like, if they weren't going to do it for Stafford, are they going to do it for Kirk? Are they going to do it for
Stafford's the best
Back
guy that you
even?
can find out there. Kirk, Carr. You're better to bring in Stafford than them. And look, they didn't want to do it for Stafford, so why would they want it? It's exactly right. Why would they want to do it for those other guys? And not to say, I think we both agree, Drew Lock isn't the right guy. But are the Broncos going to stick with him week 1? Absolutely, they will.
Agreed.
Absolutely. So we can move on to the next team here. Speaking of in the division, we've got the Oakland. Whoa. Las Vegas Raiders. Whoops.
It was 2016.
Yeah. So as you can see here, we've got the top 5 cap hits. It's just a nice thing to look at in the background when you talk about moving Carr potentially, trading him, moving on from him, potentially maybe picking a quarterback this year, potentially bringing in a free agent. I like all those talking points. I think they're fun. I think they're cool. I think it's totally worth having in Vegas. But to me, Derek Carr is going to be their guy week 1, and I think they're just going to bring him back and kind of just continue to do what they do in Vegas.
Yeah. I would say it's sort of the same thing for me that I was saying about the Wentz and the Stafford thing. Again, these guys are very, like, they're not the same guys. They are, like, Stafford is better than both, but I kind of look at them in the same way where it's like, I don't know if you're winning a Super Bowl with these guys unless everything goes perfect. So I like the idea of the Raiders entertaining the idea of moving on.
Me as well.
I don't hate Carr or anything like that. I think Carr is a very solid QB, but I'm just a big advocate for always trying to look for something better at the quarterback position, always trying to find that elite guy. So I like that idea, but at the same time, we live here in a little place called reality, where the Raiders are just not the type of team to make this big, splashy, explosive move. They're a very conservative, safe organization. We've seen it in their draft picks the last couple of years.
And you know
so
what?
The likelihood of Carr going anywhere is very slim. I think the only reason why these rumors are out here is because Deshaun Watson is on the market.
You're absolutely right.
Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about it.
And to add something too, just before we move on from the Raiders, is that, like, they can't be bad in Vegas in their inaugural season with fans. Like, they cannot walk out there, trade
Carr for the black hole.
Yeah, no, they need to be good. They've relocated now. They need to remain competitive. I think they know that. Their business guys are telling them that. So trading Carr and potentially, like, being really, really bad is not something they're going to do. You're right. They're a conservative organization, and they're just going to play it safe for all the fans in Vegas. So the next team we've got here is the San Francisco 49ers. There he is. Pretty Jimmy looking back at you with a cap hit of $26.4 million. Pretty standard quarterback cap for guys around his, I guess, talent level. The Niners are interesting, right? Because they got devastated by injuries. They are a way better roster than a lot of the other teams that we've been talking about previously. But do they continue down the road with this Jimmy Garoppolo experiment that they started a few years ago, or do they go in a different direction?
Yeah, man. I was thinking about this. It was the other day, I think, and I was just thinking, like, man, I don't think I've ever been like a quarterback has ever taken such a 180, because when the 49ers were initially traded for Jimmy Garoppolo, probably like 3 or 4 years ago, he came in and the Niners were arguably the worst team in the league at the time. They were like, I think this was the year that the Browns went 0-16. And the Niners weren't winning any games. Like, they were right there on pace to go 0-16 with the Browns. Jimmy Garoppolo comes in and he literally went on like a 7-game winning streak.
Yeah, he was
garbage
I
roster.
remember him being 7-0, and it was the biggest deal ever, and everyone was super hyped. But
I was buying in, like, this guy was just like one of these elite guys sitting on the bench, and like he's going to be a top 10 quarterback going forward. And it's just done such a 180 to the point where now it's very clear that he is just a game manager. And that it's unfortunate, but at the same time, I do think it's clear that the 49ers are looking to move on. They're looking to upgrade. They kind of saw that their ceiling last year was making it to the Super Bowl and in a perfect season virtually, and they weren't able to overcome a team with just better quarterback play. So they're smart to want to move on. They've been in trade talks for a bunch of different quarterbacks this offseason, so it's clear that they're showing their hand. They're not happy with Garoppolo. So I believe, I don't know if you want to give your take on the situation.
No, I agree with you. You can go ahead. I agree with you.
Okay, because I'm just going to say, I believe that Jimmy Garoppolo gets released here. The cap hit when they initially signed him was set up so that they could actually move on pretty easily after the first year or two. And I think that's what they're going to do here. This is the way that the contract was designed.
Yeah. And
So
let
I
me
think they're
too, because I was just going to bring up before that, like, what team in a trade situation really wants to take on that $26 million cap hit that Garoppolo has, right? Not a lot of teams will want to do that. If he can't figure it out in San Francisco, where is he going to figure it out? So I think that's a very good prediction there.
Yeah, and so who I think is going to be taking his place is Deshaun Watson.
Mm-hmm.
I this is mostly just like a fantasy pick for me because I would love to see Kyle Shanahan have Deshaun. Like I think they would be a Super Bowl contender. No question about it in my opinion.
Bro. Yeah.
And the reason why I have this happening is like I'm just kind of picturing it in my mind, like how did the 49ers get Deshaun Watson? I think they leverage one of their young defensive pieces, whether it's Nick Bosa, whether it's maybe Fred Warner. As much as it would hurt to lose that guy, you're getting Deshaun Watson.
Absolutely.
Like, Kyle Shanahan has not had a real quarterback to work with since Matt Ryan won MVP and the Falcons were one quarter away from winning a Super Bowl.
Yep.
So I think would just be the dream scenario. And I think if the 49ers can picture what this would look like, they will go all in and just attack and try and get Deshaun Watson.
And you know what, man? They have the 12th overall pick this year too, because of all
they can use that
concerns they had. They can use that 12th overall pick, a lot higher of a pick than the talent on their team really shows. So you have to love that fit for Deshaun as well. Can you imagine him in that offense with Debo and Ayuk and Kittle? Good offensive line. You put Deshaun Watson in there, man. It's ripping up defenses all day long. I would. You hate to lose Nick Bosa, but you have to do that.
I wouldn't blink.
If it's on the table, Nick Bosa, couple firsts, you're doing it all day long. You're doing it. So that's a really cool spot for him. And how good would that be not for my Panthers because it's in the NFC, but how good would it be for the league to have Deshaun on a team, the history of the Niners, the fan base of the Niners? It'd be so good for the league to see him go to such a stable, good place. John Lynch, great GM there. He might be able to make something work. So I love that spot, man. As soon as we switched to this, you kind of smirked as soon as you saw this slide come up, and I had a feeling this is the Watson team. This is if it wasn't the Jets or the Dolphins, this has got to be the Watson team. But
I want to see it, man. I do.
Oh, it would be fun as hell. It would be so good for the NFL as well. The next team we're talking about, my least favorite team in the league, the Minnesota Vikings. I'm just going to get it right out of the way, make this quick. I think they're going to roll with Kirk. I don't think it's the right decision. I just think that they're just going to do it. The Vikings are kind of conservative in the way that the Raiders are conservative. Mm-hmm. And I could just see them sticking with him kind of until the contract is up a little bit and they can move on from it easier. I think this Kirk era of Vikings football it's not over yet. They're not going to pull the plug on it yet. And so that's why I think Kirk will be back with the Vikings next year.
Yeah, I think you just took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say the exact same thing, is that they are a lot like the Raiders, where it's like, they're just content being this team that is like a fringe playoff team and just is never, like, they're not going to even come close to a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
They're happy to be that, just like the Raiders are. And I mean, they extended Kirk last offseason. Probably made you really happy as a Packers fan. I know it would make me really happy that they extended Kirk and Zimmer. And I think that's just the proof is right there that they are fine with just having like a good, solid offense with Kirk that will never win a Super Bowl and just a kind of a shitty defense.
And it's weird, man, that teams are okay with just lingering in this area, but the Vikings are one of those teams. And as you said, we're living in reality. We have to predict where this quarterback carousel is going to land. And let's not kid ourselves that the Vikings are going to make a splash move for like Watson or Prescott or something exciting. They're rolling.
I just want to say, like, the only reason why we're even talking about it is because Kirk has been in rumors. Trade rumors to like the 49ers, that kind of thing. But it's like, I don't know, if the 49ers were to make this move, I think Kirk is definitely better than Jimmy, but is he that much better that you make this?
No, he's just an older, little more experienced Jimmy. Like, he's not, Kirk's fine. Kirk is nothing special. You are kidding yourself if you want to take that $31 million cap hit to get Kirk Cousins on your team. So, Kirk Cousins going to be the guy in Minnesota. And here we are. Here we are with the Detroit Lions. Obviously, the Goff trade is pretty exciting stuff. It's a little old news now, so we won't dive into the details of it or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So I think Goff will be the guy week 1. I think they'll put him out there week 1 because I think they're going to take Trey Lance in the draft, or they're going to take, Justin Fields potentially if he falls to them, which he does in our mock draft. But in a scenario where Justin Fields doesn't make it out of that top 7, I think Detroit has the 8th pick. Is that right? The 8th pick? I think it is the 8th pick. So if they get Justin Fields or Trey Lance, I think both of those guys are great picks for the organization, but I do think they will start Goff week 1 to kind of just get him in there. And, they traded for him. I don't think it would be a bad idea to start your rookie, especially if they take Trey Lance. If they take Trey Lance, I do think they'll start Goff. Justin Fields depends how the offseason goes, right? That's a totally different story. But yeah, Goff's my guy week 1 for this team, but I do think that they will draft a quarterback that is going to be their guy for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I'm not going to say too much about it because I agree in the sense that like Goff is not the long-term answer, right? But my actual prediction is not that they will take Trey Lance or Justin Fields because I don't know. I just get the vibe that like this is a new era for this specific team. This is their first year. I think they're going to do a lot like what the Panthers did last year, where just they establish a culture with like a bunch of veterans and they take like a rookie like Micah Parsons in the draft just to kind of approve the floor of that defense. And then next year, like they're going to be bad no matter what, right? Yeah. That's what I'm looking at here. So they don't need to force the issue on quarterback, right? They can just take the best defensive player or the best like receiver or something and then go QB next year.
But you're in a scenario where you have a lot of if Justin Fields falls to you, you got to really consider making.
Yeah, no, if Fields falls, I would make that pick. I just don't see Fields falling.
But I agree, but it's not out of the question that Fields falls. And Lance also himself would be a good guy to kind of develop behind what you're saying in the sense that I agree they're going to try and build a culture, Goff, and they've got all these vet guys. Throw Lance in there and just let him kind of develop in the background and kind of see where it goes. It would be an exciting time to be a Lions fan because you would have a future ahead of you, which is nice.
Yeah, I don't think it's outrageous or anything. And we'll kind of talk about this when I make my pick on where I think Trey Lance is going and why I think it makes a little bit more sense. It's just the idea of this first year in the Dan Campbell era. It does make sense to take a quarterback and get their guy especially if Fields is there. But I'm just thinking like, I don't know, they're going to be bad. They're going to have a high pick next year. So why not just establish the culture? Like Dan Campbell's a defensive guy, like establish get an elite player on defense like Micah Parsons. That's my take. But we can move on to the Bears if you so inclined.
Absolutely. Yep. Do you want to start off about the Bears?
Yeah, the Bears are probably the most interesting spot because there's a select few teams where it's like they don't have a quarterback right now. Like they actually, I guess you could say that Nick Foles is under contract, but I think it's pretty clear if they go into next year with Nick Foles as their starting quarterback,
what do they do?
Bears fans are probably going to storm Soldier Field and tear it down. And I wouldn't blame them one single bit because I don't think the Bears have had more than an average quarterback in their entire franchise history, and they're one of the most old franchises in the NFL. Yeah. So I think it's high time that they get their fans a quarterback that, has a nice floor that they can go into the season with confidence that he's not going to just throw their season away on any given Sunday. Mm-hmm. And that's what they've had in Mitchell Trubisky. They declined his 5th-year option.
Yeah.
Smart move. I think the talk kind of died down, but at one point last year there was talk should the Bears go back to Trubisky? Should they re-sign him? Because he was playing fine against some of the worst defenses in the league.
Yeah, he was playing fun. He wasn't even playing good. He was just playing
exactly.
Yeah.
So he's a free agent. I don't see any scenario where they bring him back.
Not a chance.
Unless it's a backup situation, but that would just seem too awkward to me.
Yeah.
So it's time to look for an upgrade.
Yeah.
The Bears sitting at the 20th overall pick do not really have a lot of options in the draft. By the time that comes around, they'd be insanely lucky if Mac Jones is there. Mm-hmm. So I don't see that happening. I'm looking around the league because the thing is, what the Bears need, they need a steady floor, right? Yes. They don't need this guy to come in and they don't need to take a big shot on Watson, right? Mm-hmm. They don't need to do that, right?
Yeah.
So you would think Kirk kind of makes sense, Carr kind of makes sense, but as we've established, we don't think the teams are going to be wanting to move off of them. So you're looking around the league. We need a guy. We're not looking to get Jameis in here, right?
No.
We're not looking for high volatility. We're not looking for Cam Newton.
You're looking for a consistent guy, a guy who can move the ball down the field. And I think I know
who's that. Who's that? Dak Prescott.
Exactly who I was thinking.
Dak Prescott.
Yeah. It's time. Can you?
Exactly. The fit would just be so good because Dak is just like that kind of guy where it's like he will bring to you a steady floor and a high ceiling.
Yeah.
And the big difference is like I think the Bears are like you're sitting there with Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy. They're fighting for their lives here. They need to make a big move to save their jobs. They're going to go all in to get Dak if he hits the open market.
I completely agree.
And I think the Cowboys have played hardball with Dak long enough. It seems like there's this like line that the Cowboys are not willing to cross to pay Dak. Yeah. And Dak is not willing to go any lower. So,
it's willing to pay Dak? Chicago's willing to pay Dak.
Exactly. Chicago will pay him whatever he asks for.
Exactly.
So if the Cowboys, we know Jerry Jones is not afraid of playing hardball. He'll come to the negotiating table with his terms, and he's not gonna give you an inch if he doesn't want to. So I think that's what actually ends up happening. It seems kind of unfathomable that Dallas would let a quarterback like Dak get away from them with the state of their offense and their roster ready to compete. But I don't know. I think that this is just going to happen. Like Jerry Jones is just going to be stubborn. Dak is going to rightfully want to get paid, and the Bears are the perfect suitor. They will pay whatever he wants.
And you know what, man? It's true enough, everything that you just said. And it's not a situation where they have to trade Dak and they have any leverage. Dak is a free agent. Dak can go wherever Dak wants to go. So the Cowboys playing hardball with him like this is not a really good idea when you look at how many quarterback-hungry teams there are in the league and teams like the Bears that will just pay this guy whatever he wants. I think it's a perfect fit. And I was saying this kind of since the whole Dak stuff started, that the Bears are the perfect team for Dak. He's just good enough that you can really be – Bears fans would think they're going to win the division.
Oh, yeah.
Bears fans would go crazy for Dak. And he adds that stability that you just need in Chicago after such a long time of like volatility at the position.
Yeah. The only thing is that the Bears cap situation is a little bit dubious right now. They might need to move some things around, but at the same time, especially with a quarterback, they can kind of backload the contract if they need to for when some of these like expiring contracts come up, or they can get rid of a guy like Akeem Hicks. It's like as stable of a guy that he's been. For the Bears, his cap hit is only like $1,500,000, which isn't crazy for his cap hit, which is like 12 mil. So like that kind of guy would be reasonable to move off of.
Robert Quinn, like there are a few things that you can do here.
Quinn's cap hit, I mean that was a terrible contract that the Bears gave him. His cap hit's probably too big, but like there are some other moves you can make. Defensive tackle is a replaceable position, so Hicks would make a lot of sense. The point is that if the Bears would want Dak and they can get him, they will find a way.
And here's the thing, man. I think they sit down with Dak one time. They get a feel for how that's going to go. They get the idea that it's going to go through. They're shipping some guys off to get this thing to go through. So, yeah, I actually was going to – this was my spicy take of the video, was that Dak was going to go to the Bears. I'm glad you're on board, man, because that would be pretty cool. Not as a Packers fan, but as an NFL fan, that would be cool to have Dak in Chicago. It's a perfect marriage there.
Yeah.
The next team we've got here is the Saints. So as you can see, interesting thing I just want to bring up real quick. Taysom Hill is 4th on the team in cap hit.
Yep.
4th on the team in cap hit because they gave him a stupid contract because he's like a gadget player who can like kind of throw and kind of run. That's not how you win. That's just silly. Jameis Winston should be the guy. I will die on this hill that Jameis Winston should be the guy moving forward. If they go forward with Taysom Hill and it works, I'm wrong. But Jameis Winston is a better quarterback than Taysom Hill is, and you cannot change my mind on that.
It's funny. I totally agree, and I was like having this rant in the middle of the season when the Saints declared that Hill was going to be the starter while Breeze was injured. I just think it's one of the dumbest things. Like the Saints, because it's funny because I like the Saints a lot. They're one of my they're one of my favorite teams to watch in the NFL. I like a lot of their players, and I like Sean Payton a lot. But it's just so funny because it's one of the dumbest things in the NFL, their obsession with Taysom Hill.
It's so stupid.
And the fact that they paid him so much money before we even saw him play quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah.
Like this was like a couple years ago when he was just like a gadget player.
Yeah.
It's just so insane, but it's funny. And honestly, I think like with that cap hit, it's going to be hard for them to, especially because they're cap strong. They're one of the most cap strong teams in the league.
Yeah.
Like they are not going to be able to afford to make a big splash at the quarterback position. They're in no position draft wise to take a quarterback. No. I don't even know if they can afford to bring back Jameis. So my prediction here is that Taysom Hill is the starter next year. Sean Payton clearly loves him. They
just
don't really have many other options. I think it's a bad decision. Like,
yeah,
I don't think he looked good at all in his starting time. Like, he had some splash plays,
yeah.
and he brings like a good floor with his rushing ability, but he's not accurate downfield. He doesn't really have a super, like, he has a strong arm, but not like he can just chuck it really far. He can't really throw it accurately downfield.
And a lot of the plays that make you think Taysom Hill is good are not plays where he's being a quarterback. It's plays where he's being like a wide receiver. And
Yeah.
then he can manage the game as a decent quarterback, but it's his like X factor receiving and running and all that stuff. You don't want a quarterback like that. Jameis Winston signed a 1-year contract with your team, a prove it deal, leaving Tampa Bay. Let the guy be your quarterback. He's a way better actual quarterback. Let's not forget this guy like led the league in touchdowns like a few years ago and
Yeah.
was amazing. Well, not amazing. He also led the league in picks, I'm pretty sure. But these are things that he was supposed to work out in this Saints system, and you have to let him try to do that, right? Is that not what you would like? I mean,
Oh yeah, yeah. This is my prediction. What I think is going to happen that
Yeah.
they stick with Taysom Hill. Just being realistic, looking at their cap and their draft picks that they've kind of just mortgaged to in the Drew Brees era. By the way, we're assuming Drew Brees retires. Nothing
Yes.
has been officially announced.
Yeah,
I think it's
we're
safe
assuming
to
Drew Brees.
assume that, but nothing has been said for sure. So we have to make that clear. But yeah, I'm just picking what I think is going to happen. I think the best thing for the Saints would be to get Jameis Winston back after sitting a year learning under Drew Brees and Sean Payton, hopefully ironing out some of those like negative tendencies that you were talking about. I think that would be ideal for the Saints, but I just don't. I think Jameis is going to. There's going to be demand for Jameis, I think, and he doesn't have to come back to the Saints if he doesn't want to, or if they can't afford to pay him what he deserves. So I think that's the scenario that plays out here. But I do think Jameis would be far, far better for this.
I agree with you on saying Taysom Hill might be the starter, but I have to. My official prediction cannot be Taysom Hill. It would hurt me too much to see my boy Jameis. I love Jameis. I think he's so good. To see him just not be on this team starting and Taysom Hill get the job over him, it would infuriate me.
Now, don't worry. In my outcome, I have Jameis. Like, he's not settling. He's going somewhere better.
All right. Well, I'm going to say Jameis is going to be the guy. They got to figure out his money situation, but they brought him here for a reason. And so I have to say Jameis is going to be the guy moving forward in New Orleans.
All right.
The next team we've got is the Atlanta Falcons. We won't spend too much time on this one because of all the GM talk that you've heard, kind of just like the way the Falcons are. Matt Ryan's going to be their quarterback. We have it on here because they have that 4th overall pick.
Yeah.
And so you have to ask the question to yourself, will they draft a guy? I think it would be a good idea to draft a guy. I don't think they will. I don't think it would be a bad idea. I just think this team sticks with Matt Ryan moving forward and just kind of sticks around in that world that they are always in with Matt Ryan.
Yeah, I agree. You know, what we've heard from Arthur Blank is like it's pretty definitive. Matt Ryan's not getting traded anywhere or anything like that. He's going to be the starter, and the dead cap isn't crazy with the deal they gave him, I think, last offseason anyway. So not realistic for Matt Ryan to go anywhere. I think he's going to be the starter, but I do have the prediction that they will select Justin Fields, and he's just going to ride the pine, learn behind Matt Ryan, which would be great because some questions to Justin Fields about, like, you know, some of his, you know, playing outside of structure, playing outside of the Ohio State system. But he has the accuracy, the physical traits and everything. So this is an ideal situation for Justin Fields and the Falcons to kind of pull a Packers here and just let, you know, Matt Ryan play another season, hopefully play a lot better with a Falcons team that does have a lot of talent, and then let Justin Fields take over once Matt Ryan starts to decline.
Yeah, I agree. That would be a really good idea for them to do. But I think we would both agree Matt Ryan is starting week 1 in the next season of football. So we can go on to the next team here, the Carolina Panthers. So I assume this was the team that you were referring Trey Lance going to, because that makes a lot of sense with the coaching, kind of just the culture fit, everything like that. This is a team that I also have taking a quarterback, whether it's Trey Lance. I said Trey Lance in the Lions thing, assuming Fields didn't fall. But if Fields falls to the Lions at 8 and then Lance can fall down to the Panthers, I think this would be a situation that he could go. But do you want to take it away with your thoughts on the Panthers?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we kind of talked about this. Like, this is something that I've kind of foreseen, and it's something that I really hope happens because I did see this coming a long time ago. I remember we were talking, me, you, and Parfait were talking about this. And I made the prediction that Trey Lance would go to the Panthers with the at that time we didn't know what their pick was going to be, but now we know it's going to be the 8th overall pick. And the reason why is because number one, the GM that gave Teddy Bridgewater this contract is gone now. And at the time that they gave him this contract, I was like all on board with what the Panthers were doing, getting Matt Rule and Joe Brady and getting this new era. I was all on board. And then they gave Teddy Bridgewater that 3-year like big money contract. And I was like, what the hell are you doing? Like this is the like I love Teddy Bridgewater. He's a great guy, but he's not a good quarterback at all.
Teddy showed less as a quarterback in the Saints system than Jameis did last year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, he was fine in the Saints. They were probably pretty equal, but it's the Saints system, right?
Yeah.
In the Panthers system, Bridgewater was not good. Some people will look at the stats and say that he was, but no, if you watched him play, he limited that offense. They could not really throw downfield consistently at all. And so, but the thing is, the reason why I made a bet that Trey Lance was going to go to the Panthers and he was going to start week 1. I do not believe that's going to happen now. I think they are just going to be too tied to Bridgewater financially for him not to be the guy. Because my thinking was they're going to get a guy who's better in the door, and they're going to see immediately, like, we can't sit here with the low floor of Bridgewater. But even for what I think is a smart team in the Panthers, I think they're just NFL teams in general are just too conservative to make that big of a bold move and start a rookie, especially one with Trey Lance who needs to develop week 1, even though I think he will be better than Bridgewater week 1 right out the gate. I think it just makes sense for Bridgewater to start and Trey Lance to sit behind him and take over. My prediction is that he takes over early to mid-season at some point when Bridgewater's just playing like, Bridgewater, and the Panthers want something better.
And what do you even expect out of? You can't really expect that much out of Bridgewater, right? So if they go out there and they take a quarterback, like Bridgewater knows what his job's going to be a little on the line as well. Maybe that puts a fire under his ass a little bit to kind of sling the ball down the field a little more. But I agree with you. Bridgewater will be the starter week 1, but this is a place where a quarterback's going. One way or another, a quarterback is going to this team in the draft this year. The next team we've got, the Dallas Cowboys. So they've lost their boy. They've lost Dak to the Bears. But they have a good offense. And they've still got pieces of that amazing offensive line left. They've got some young guys on defense. The Cowboys are not a team that likes to lose. So what do you think they're going to do here to try and fill that hole of losing Dak to the Bears?
My prediction is that they sign Jameis Winston from the Saints after sitting a year under Sean Payton, learning, because we saw him with the Buccaneers. He always was able to put up big numbers, make big time throws downfield. When you put him with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, when Godwin broke out, he had a huge season offensively. The only problem has always been the decision making and the turnovers. So you're putting Jameis in an offense with three really, really good receivers, still a good offensive line, even though the pieces on it are getting older, with a year under Sean Payton, hopefully learning to iron out some of that decision making, and Drew Brees as well. We can't discount that. So I don't know. I think this is a great move. He's going to be a lot cheaper than Dak. Jerry Jones loves that. He's looking at the dollar signs and he's seeing Jameis's contract is a lot better than Dak. And Jerry Jones is probably thinking to himself, I put together a team so good that I'm going to show that I made the right decision moving on from Dak. I'm going to get Jameis in here. He's going to put up huge numbers. I just think if Dak goes, this is a great fit for Jameis Winston.
No, I agree, man. And if Dak goes, the problem with me saying I think Jameis is going to stay with the Saints is that I don't know what the hell the Cowboys are going to do. If you lose Dak and you look at the market that's out there, like, you can't fill that spot very well. So this is a huge question mark for the Cowboys if they do not bring back Dak. Bringing back Dak from a Cowboys perspective is the best thing you can do. Stop playing hardball with him. Give him the money he wants. I'm not saying Dak is an amazing quarterback or anything, but you have to pay the guy reasonable quarterback money in today's market to kind of keep a guy around. So
yeah, man,
big question marks all over this board here if they decide to move on from Dak. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm not a Dak hater or anything. I am a Cowboys hater, but I think it honestly would not be. I think it would kind of be a good move if they go with Jameis instead. Because I am a Jameis believer. I'll admit it. I do like Jameis a lot, especially coming off of a year with the Saints. So I don't know if they can't make it work contract wise with Dak, even though I think they should. I think that should be their first option. Jameis is not a bad consolation prize.
No, not at all. Not at all. And the next team we've got here, the Philadelphia Eagles, keeping within the division of the Cowboys. So they've traded Wentz. And as we talked about earlier, the Wentz trade, we think it was kind of good for both parties. This one, once again, you don't spend too much time on it because the picture of the guy's looking right at you with a big smiley face. That's Jalen Hurts. He's the guy that's going to start week 1 for them. The reason why we have them in this video is because they traded Wentz, right? They're moving into a new direction with the quarterback position. They're not going to draft a guy. They're going to roll with their guy Hurts next year. They're not going to bring in a free agent and give him big money. So this one kind of speaks for itself. But would you agree with that?
I would agree in the sense that I have the Eagles. I'm predicting the Eagles to maintain Hurts as their starter. But at the same time, there are a lot of rumors out there that the Eagles will be taking a quarterback with the 6th overall pick. So I don't think it's crazy. I think there's a lot of talk about how well Hurts played. I'll be honest. I watched some of his games played, but I didn't watch them intently to see if the stats were kind of a mirage or anything like that. But that's kind of the impression that some people are saying. I kind of liked what I did see from Hurts. So that's why I think it would be smart to play. I wasn't big on him coming into the draft, but I did like
a season, right? With drafting him where you did.
Yeah, I don't think that's crazy. But at the same time, if Justin Fields is sitting there, I don't think it's crazy to take him either.
So then put you in the same situation that you were just in with Wentz and Hurts of last year. Like you have these two guys. Why not?
Well, no, because the big difference is that Wentz was the established guy that had come close to some people think winning an MVP.
But then what are they going to do with Hurts, who we haven't really seen exactly what he can be, and he has been okay in their offense.
Well, he would compete for the starting job, I suppose. But in the scenario where Justin Fields takes over, he would just be the backup, I guess. I don't know. I would be kind of a fan of that move. Obviously, I'm not a fan of the Eagles, but I think that would be that's probably what I would do if I were the Eagles. If Justin Fields is there, I would just take him because I think he's better than Hurts, and I'm not going to settle on the chance that Hurts is good just because he looked okay in his first year.
But I think you have to give him. I mean, I guess this is where we disagree, but I think you have to give him just a shot for one season with where you drafted him last year. Draft a guy like Devonta Smith with your top pick. Then if you're bad and Hurts isn't good, you're going to have a similar pick next year where you can draft a guy that, can replace Hurts once you know fully more what he is. If you bring in a quarterback now and Hurts ends up leaving your team in a few years because he doesn't want to just sit on the bench, well, then you're in a situation where you might not be getting total value for what Hurts actually is.
Yeah, I mean, and I've said this to you before, I'm a big fan of just taking quarterbacks that I think are good just because they're such valuable assets. The best one will rise to the top. Then you have you're looking for one guy, right? If you don't know that you have the guy, I think it's always good process to just take another guy. And if the original guy turns out to be good and the guy you drafted turns out to be bad, oh, well, at least now the other guy still has some value that you can trade for him. We saw Wentz in he literally played probably the worst quarterback play we saw in the league last year and fetched, a third and potentially a first. So these guys have value, right? So my thinking is just that okay, if you're still giving Hurts a chance, right? You're still letting him compete despite taking
You have to start him. You have to start him week 1.
Yeah, maybe you do, or maybe you just say okay, we see Hurts in training camp. Fields is better. We'll just go with him. But my point is you're getting one guy out of this ideally, right? Or at least you're taking 2 shots. So theoretically, I'm looking at it as it just raises your chance of finding the guy by getting another guy in the door. So that's how I look at it. That's why I'm saying it's probably what I would do. But the prediction is what we think the Eagles are going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, they're going to look at this and say, let's give Hurts a chance. Let's not bring in competition. Even though I see kind of the merits of that, I also think it just is smarter to bring I think it's just smarter to bring in another guy, especially I'm not saying bring in Kyle Trask, right? I'm saying it's because it's Justin Fields and I feel good about Justin Fields. I like him better than Hurts.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I would do it, is just because I think it's worth it to take Fields there.
Yeah. No, I hear you for sure. It's an interesting debate though to kind of talk about with the Eagles just whole situation. But yeah, I mean, I just think as we already just kind of said, I just think they're going to roll Hurts out there, get a nice weapon for him, and then if it doesn't work out, they have a similar pick next year to kind of take another guy. But it's an interesting debate for the Philadelphia Eagles. But I think we both Hurts week 1 prediction.
Yes.
And the final team, I believe final team, unless I'm forgetting a slide that we put together here, is the Washington football team. You've got a pick of good old Alex there. But unfortunately, it's time for them to move on from Alex. Alex is an incredible man, incredible story, but it's just time to move on in a different direction. And I'm not going to waste any time. This is the team that I think is going to take Mac Jones, similar to what I had in our mock a few days ago, or I guess it was last Wednesday, actually, when it came out. But yeah, I think they're going to take Mac Jones. I just think with where they pick, he's going to fall into that range. And if your Patriots don't take him, I could see him being selected here and kind of working into the system. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think if Mac Jones is there, the football team would be smart to take him. In my scenario, I don't have that happening because Mac Jones would be going at 15 to the Patriots. I do think, just to talk a little bit about what you said, I think we both agree that Alex Smith is he is a solid player. You know, he brings a decent floor. Obviously, like you said, seems like a great guy. Went through a lot to get back on the football field, but the football team needs to do what's best for the football team.
Yeah.
And the best thing for them is to move off of Alex Smith. So in this scenario, I do have them getting a new quarterback, but with the way everything shook out, they were kind of like, it was kind of like the musical chairs of quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. And the football team was the last team to get the spot, right? They were the odd man out. So what I have them doing is reuniting Cam Newton with Ron Rivera here, and trying to pair him with like a better offense, solid offensive line. Obviously, you have some playmakers with Terry McLaurin, Logan Thomas, Antonio Gibson, trying to just kind of revive him, putting him back in the Ron Rivera system, and seeing if there's anything left there. Because they didn't really have, when the way it shook out for me, they didn't really have a better option. This is the best option on the board. And out of the free agent guys, like Andy Dalton would still be out there. There's a couple other stragglers that would probably be just getting backup jobs instead. Yeah. So if it's going to be one of those guys, might as well be Cam Newton, who makes sense.
Yep. That's a really cool prediction, man, to pair up those two again. But you just have to hope, if you're a football team fan, well, we're all football team fans, but if you're a fan of the one in Washington, that they can kind of get their hands on a young guy. Because, as we saw with Cam and the Patriots, as we talked about earlier, you wonder how much is really left in the tank there.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was the cost of making the playoffs, though, was having this late pick. This is what you get for getting blown out in the first round of the playoffs. It's just you have no quarterback. So sorry, Washington, like your team didn't deserve, your team shouldn't have made the playoffs if you wanted a good quarterback,
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, if it wasn't for the Eagles, it would have been the New York Football Giants there. So really, Washington kind of like backed their way into this pick. But thank you very much for watching, everyone. This was a lot of fun to kind of go through the NFL quarterback carousel of the offseason and kind of just see where we have these guys going. Did we make a prediction of who yeah, we did. I said Mac Jones is going to start, and you said Cam Newton. So that's good.
Yes.
But thank you very much for watching. We'll be back next Wednesday with some more football stuff. Appreciate listening. Comment below on, your thoughts on this stuff, like Jameis going to the Cowboys, Newton to the football team, like a lot of changeover in the NFC.
Back to the Bears.
Let us know what you think, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks a lot, guys. See ya.